Gooning is illegal? Jeter here. Gooners now more than ever are more oppressed than ever before. Right now, it's actually illegal to goon in the UK due to law changes outlawing gooning. Gooning is now a serious crime in the UK, and anyone who is caught illegally gooning will be shanked, castrated, have battery acid thrown onto their face, and worst of all, they will be forced to live in Birmingham. If that's not bad enough, payment processors like Visa and MasterCard are allegedly trying to take away all your favorite video games, such as Opie Succubus Academy, Sucky and Busty, Demonic and Lusty, and VR Chat. Yes, that is right. Unfortunately, the Gooner is going through some tough times. But in light of these troubling events, I will be reading from the GOON Chronicles. The GOON Chronicles is a historical text offered by many different Goonstorians, which records the lives of the greatest Gooners all throughout history. I hope that by reading this historical text, you, the dear viewer, can be inspired by these two great Gooners who revolutionized gooning. Goonstorians play a vital role as they document and record important information about gooning for the Gooner community. And no one was more dedicated to this task than the Goon explorer, Richard Francis Burton. As a child, Burton was a globetrotter, as much of his childhood was spent traveling all over Europe with his parents. And because of these travels, Burton would pick up a knack for learning languages, as he would become fluent in French, Italian, and Latin by the time he was a teenager. Burton would then attend Oxford University, but would quickly drop out in 1840 after getting caught attending an illegal horse race. He would then later comment that Oxford was unfit for a man of his temperament. In 1842, Burton would enlist as an officer into the East India Company's standing army and would be stationed in Pakistan. However, Burton, unlike his fellow officers, embraced the local customs of wherever he would be stationed, and so he would become fluent in Persian, Hindustani, Arabic, and Sanskrit. He would then begin his anthropological research in India, where he investigated all the different kinds of brothels that took place in India, such as all the different kinds of positions, rituals, and slang during sex. He would also develop a talent for disguise, as Burton claimed he was able to pass himself off as an Arab, Persian, or Indian with frightening accuracy, and that talent would soon be useful, as in 1853, Burton might have been the first white man to attempt a Hajj. Now, what is a Hajj? A Hajj is an annual Islamic pilgrimage to the city of Mecca that all Muslims are expected to make at least once in their lives. Non-Muslims weren't allowed in the holy city of Mecca, and they definitely would have executed him if he was caught sneaking in. So that's why he had to create his secret identity, Haji Abdullah, an Afghan Muslim doctor by day and a wild and out white boy by night. And surprisingly, he didn't get caught, as after successfully completing his pilgrimage, Burton would then write a book based on his experiences, titled A Personal Narrative of a Pilgrimage to Al-Madinah and Mecca, which also included the erotic and sensual details of life in the Mecca. And in 1856, he would then begin another expedition, trying to find the source of the Nile River, with fellow adventurer and explorer John Hanning Speke. Departing from Zanzibar in 1856, he would reach Lake Tanganyika in 1858. Being one of the first Europeans to do so. However, he would nearly die, as he contracted malaria and dysentery during the expedition. However, despite his illness, Burton would still make it a point to record the sexual customs of the areas he visited. Unfortunately, by the end of the journey, his friendship with John Hanning Speke would be destroyed, as the two men disagreed on who found the source of the Nile. In 1863, Burton would make his return to Britain, and would create the Kama Shastra Society. You see, back then, Britain was a very tyrannical and puritanical country, as publishing anything sexually explicit was illegal. So, to get around this, Burton would create an underground railroad for foreign smut, that he would then translate into English and sell to paid members of his society. The first work the Kama Shastra Society published, the Kama Sutra, a book best known for its one section on sexual positions, where the book describes 84 different sexual positions that two lovers may employ. In 1885, Burton would publish his 16-volume translation of a book of 1001 Nights. But more interestingly, he would append his own personal thesis to this book, where he introduced its readers to the sotatic zone theory that claimed that there was a global belt of sorts where homosexuality were historically widespread. This theory cataloged sexual practices by geographic region, blending both anthropology and blatant voyeurism. Now, due to Burton's linguistic capabilities, he would often work as a diplomat of sorts for the British Kingdom, and he was stationed in regions such as Brazil or Portugal. And because of his unique position, Burton would often use his influence to research and collect erotic art, manuscripts, and objects. It was said that for his time, Burton's private art was considered the most vast and explicit in the world. However, in 1890, October 21, Burton would suffer from a heart attack in the city of Trieste and perish. But to make matters even worse, Burton's wife, Isabel, would commit a great sin, as she was for some reason distressed by the erotic nature of Burton's unpublished work, and she would go on to burn many of Burton's unpublished manuscripts and notes, forever destroying important Goon information. However, despite her attempt at destroying Burton's legacy, his dedication to documenting eroticism all over the world remains, and Richard Francis Burton will forever be remembered as the Goon Explorer. Before we begin, I'd like to explain the concept of the Great Man Theory. The Great Man Theory is a theory that basically says that history can largely be explained by the impact of great men, who due to their natural abilities, such as intellect, courage, or even divine inspiration, left their mark on history and pushed the world forward as a result. And one of the great men I will be talking about is Alfred Charles Kinsey, who practically modernized gooning itself. Now, Alfred Charles Kinsey was unfortunately born in Hoboken, New Jersey, on June 23, 1894. He was raised in an ultra-conservative Methodist household, and as such, Kinsey was light years away from gooning, as things such as sex and desire were forbidden to him. And it wouldn't be until his late 20s where Kinsey would be even allowed to feel the touch of a woman after marrying his wife, Clara McKillen. Kinsey would then go on to study biology, and he would become an expert on wasps. But more importantly, as a biologist, he would gain the record-keeping skills necessary for his more important endeavors. And in 1930, Kinsey would take a teaching position at the University of Indiana. But everything would soon change for Kinsey, as in the mid-1930s, the University of Indiana would ask Kinsey to co-teach a marriage course for engaged or married students. But while teaching this course, Kinsey would discover that his students knew shockingly little about human sexuality, and that the knowledge that these students did have was little more than myth. Fascinated by this, Kinsey began informally interviewing people about their sex lives and was amazed by the sheer variety of experiences. And so, in 1938, Kinsey would begin applying his scientific process he had learned from his work as a biologist to his new study, sex. And so, Kinsey began conducting structured interviews in order to collect people's sexual history. These interviews would be 1 to 3 hours long and would cover topics such as first sexual experiences, masturbation frequency, premarital and extramarital activities, same-sex encounters. This information would then be categorized by a strict coding system that Kinsey himself had developed, so that this information could be analyzed statistically. And by 1947, Kinsey had interviewed thousands of people and had managed to persuade the University of Indiana to create the Institute for Sex Research, or ISR, with him as the director. And in 1948, Kinsey would release some of his findings titled Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. This book quickly became a bestseller as it revealed some interesting statistics to the general public. It revealed that 92% of men masturbate, 50% of men have had premarital sex before the age of 25, and 37% of men have had at least one same-sex encounter to the point of orgasm. The media had dubbed it the Kinsey Report. Reactions were divided though. Some people accused Kinsey of being a degenerate, trying to undermine the traditional values of America, while others saw Kinsey's work as groundbreaking, as it had given the public an honest look at human sexuality. However, despite the controversy, Kinsey would be undeterred in his research and would release his follow-up with Sexual Behavior in the Human Female. And this book would be met with even more controversy, as Kinsey had found that 62% of women had reported masturbating, and 26% of women reported having premarital sex before the age of 25, and that 13% of women have had same-sex experiences. Also, unknown to the public at the time, Kinsey had created his own personal Goon lab in ISR HQ, as he wasn't just collecting other people's data, he was studying his own, as he would record every orgasm he had for decades, as he would record the time, date, the method, duration, and intensity of all his orgasms. He also encouraged his staff and wife to have sex with each other while he recorded. Kinsey would also experiment with extreme masturbation techniques to the point of scarring his own urethra. But unfortunately for Alfred Kinsey, he was a man born in the wrong generation, as in 1954, as the outrage would become too much as the ISR would lose most of its funding. However, despite these setbacks, Kinsey would continue to fight the good fight, but he would unfortunately die in 1956 from pneumonia and heart problems at the age of 62. And so, thus ended the story of a sex scientist. So, what do you guys think? Both Kinsey and Burton have certainly earned their place in the Goon Chronicles, as they both revolutionized gooning, with Burton sailing the world to share foreign gooning culture to the Western world. And you had Kinsey, whose research helped to demystify gooning to the public. Now, if you like this video, maybe you should watch some of my other videos, as I make bad game reviews and even worse videos. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you for watching, and have a good day. Bye!